Now I'm gonna be honest, I think Dragon Ball Super and Dragon Ball GT are both pretty bad. As continuations or sequels of Dragon Ball, they do not hold up, not even close. But with that being said, I still have infinitely more respect and enjoyment for Dragon Ball GT. And the reason for that is because GT actually seems like it has some sort of understanding of the franchise and respects the different rules and story directions that came before it. It feels like it actually could have been written by Toriyama. If Toriyama was a terrible writer, but still. As much as I don't really enjoy GT, it at least doesn't ruin certain characters or retcon important plot details and mechanics every other episode. One of the biggest instances of Super not understanding Dragon Ball, I think, is with its transformations. Dragon Ball GT introduces one new transformation in the whole show, and it's Super Saiyan 4, one of the best transformations in the franchise. Paying homage to Goku and the Saiyan's origin, it's also just a really smart solution for the next Super Saiyan design. Because up to this point, the hair of the Super Saiyans had gotten longer and longer with each transformation, to the point where if Super Saiyan 4 would have had even longer hair than 3 did, it would just look kind of ridiculous. But GT solves this in a perfect way. Dragon Ball Super, on the other hand, has Super Saiyan 1 but blue. There is zero originality or innovation with any of the transformations in Super, and it's just so goddamn many of them. We have base form Goku, but with red hair, Super Saiyan but with blue hair, Super Saiyan but pink, Frieza except he's yellow, Frieza except he's black, Super Saiyan blue but slightly lighter blue, Broly but female, Super Saiyan Trunks but really angry, Super Saiyan God but white. I can at least give a lot of props to Ultra Instinct for being very unique in its concept, but man, there is like 10 new transformations in Super at least versus GT's 1, unless you want to count like Golden Great Ape and stuff. And what I really hate is when people say, oh, but Dragon Ball has always been about cool new transformations and fighting, especially because their biggest argument is usually Super Saiyan 3. But I think that completely misses the point of what Super Saiyan 3 was supposed to be, because Goku turning Super Saiyan 3 is not supposed to be like the previous two Super Saiyan transformation moments. It's supposed to have the opposite effect. In the two arcs that came before, the only way to save the day was a new Super Saiyan transformation. That was their only option. But in this arc, Goku busts out a new Super Saiyan transformation almost at the beginning of the arc, and his hair is like 4 times longer than before, but it's still not enough to beat the villain. It's supposed to show that what saved them the last 2 times won't save them this time, and they're going to have to find a different solution. Now, it's clear that Toriyama changed his mind a few times about what that solution was going to be, but we can for sure say it wasn't a new transformation. What I think the original solution was going to be was the younger generation. I think it's clear that the theme of the Buu arc was going to be to trust the future generation, considering the ending of the Cell arc, the beginning of the Buu arc, and the lack of Goku's presence, and the focus on Goten and Trunks. So for Dragon Ball Super to completely abandon all the other side characters, especially the next generation, focus almost entirely on Goku and Vegeta, and introduce like a million transformations, I think is an incredibly stupid direction to go. The worst part, I think, is Goten and Trunks. They had a huge role in the Buu arc, but get nothing, and I mean nothing, to do in Super, like at all. I don't want to talk about the movies or the manga in this video, but that scene at the end of the superhero movie made me actually like real life mad. It genuinely felt like the writers wanted to make me angry. Now compare this to GT, where the 3 main characters are Pan, Trunks, and Kid Goku. Okay, yeah, he's not actually a kid, but still, they actually tried to incorporate the younger generation. Now, despite them getting a lot of screen time, does Trunks and Pan get any character development or do anything significant in the story? No, not really, but again, I don't think either of these shows are good, but man, do decisions like these make me respect GT so much more. Goten is also way more involved than in Super, and they actually give him a really cool personality. I love how they make him distinct from Goku and Gohan, and that all 3 of them get completely different personalities. He even gets a fight with the main villain of the arc, and he's just a really entertaining character to follow in general, even if he's not doing anything important, which is something I can say about a lot of the returning cast, to be honest, because they're the same characters we know from C, which is something I definitely can't say about Super, because Goku and the others feel like they've been all replaced with AI. The amount of times they act out of character or just do things that are so out of line with what we know about the characters before is very concerning. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of people say that Goku wasn't that stupid in Super, and people are over exaggerating, and that Goku has always been kind of silly, and I have no idea how people can say this with a straight face, because Goku is an absolute fucking doofus in Dragon Ball Super. This is one of the biggest examples to me of the Super writers having a really surface level understanding of Dragon Ball. It's like they look at Dragon Ball and are like, okay, Goku is strong and stupid, and like, yeah, that's true, but there's a lot of different levels of stupid, and there's a big difference between being a little silly and like having terminal brain damage. Like, C Goku would never forget the seal for the Mafuba. Could you imagine if in the Saiyan saga, when he went to save the rest of the Sea fighters from Nappa and Vegeta, that he like forgot the sensu beans? That would never happen, and that's not nearly as important as the thing they were going to use to defeat the main villain in the first place. Or how he doesn't understand that Bulma is pregnant, even though her stomach is way bigger and everyone around him makes it pretty damn obvious. Oh, and also the fact that he literally has 2 children himself, plus a grandchild. This is like something I'd expect from Kid Goku, because Kid Goku had lived on a mountain for like his whole life not seeing any humans, so he was ignorant to a lot of things in the world. But this is like 50-year-old Goku. Once again, Goku is not that dumb. He is capable of putting 2 and 2 together, and there are many examples of that in C. Like when he first meets future Trunks, and Trunks tells him that his mom made the time machine and knows who Goku is. Instantly after Trunks says that, Goku realizes that Bulma is Trunks' mom. At least in GT, Goku acts like Goku. He can be a bit silly there too, but not to the point where he's ever as dumb as in Super. Vegeta is also someone who is always in character in GT. Every line of dialogue he has is accurate to Vegeta from C, and his final talk with Pan at the end is beautiful and a million times better than anything he says in Super, because in Super he doesn't even want to fuse. Both before fusing into Vegito and Gogeta, he doesn't want to do it at first. But why? Why wouldn't he want to fuse? He should have overcome this by now. He's done the fusion before. He should be used to it, especially after all the other things he's done in Super itself. In GT, Vegeta is the one who brings up the idea of fusion in the first place. Not only that, but he says it like it's a given that they're going to fuse, because, I mean, yeah, it should be. Every character from Super is a shell of their actual self, and when I think about those versions of the characters, I just remember everything about them that I hate. And some characters, I swear Super straight up goes out of their way to disrespect. They must have a personal vendetta against Majin Buu, because what they did to him was actually insane. He was going to join the Universe 6 tournament, but he fell asleep.
See, now that's some bullshit.
Then he has an off-screen training arc where he gets skinny and is supposed to join the Tournament of Power, but once again, he falls asleep.
What the fuck?
This was not funny the first time, and I promise you it is still not funny the second time. And this is just the worst excuse they could pull out, because it was established in the Buu arc that he only sleeps for 5 seconds. Why even make us think that he's going to be a part of the story in the first place? Like, I actually don't understand. Now compare that to GT, where admittedly he doesn't really do much here either, but what he does get is a million times better. When he sees Oob in danger, he says his goodbyes to Mr. Satan, his one friend in the whole world, and becomes a part of Oob. This is not only a better moment than whatever he got in Super, but a really good and touching moment in itself. Seeing Majin Buu do such a big act of selflessness is really rewarding and a really good full circle moment. And this moment was possible because of Buu and Oob, two characters that either weren't in Super at all or just slept the entire time. Why couldn't Buu have been replaced with Tien? He didn't do jack shit in the tournament. Why was he even there? He shows up a bunch in Super just to do nothing. Now granted, his screen time in GT is not exactly much, but at least that's in keeping with the trajectory of his character up until that point. Like, he didn't even show up in the Buu arc tournament at all. He just stayed home with Chiaotzu. And I love Tien. I think he's an incredible character in OG Dragon Ball, so I wish he didn't have to fade into the background of the story. But again, my point is that at least GT actually recognizes that fact. But one of the worst ones is Gohan. Gohan is a fan favorite character in the Cell and Buu GT2 arc, but have you ever heard someone say Gohan is their favorite Dragon Ball Super character? Again, I really don't want to talk about superhero and the movies in this video because I feel like that's a whole different video for another day, but in the main anime, he gets disrespected time and time again, and it's clear that whoever was writing the show had absolutely no idea what to do with him. Right off the bat, we get one of the worst moments in all of Dragon Ball where they try to recreate Piccolo's sacrifice for Gohan in the most tasteless, boneless, lazy ass way that does not contain any of the qualities that made the original moment so good in the first place. This moment actually gave me secondhand embarrassment for Gohan the first time I watched it. He then proceeds to not do anything at all for the next 2 arcs, then he trains for a day and is all of a sudden fighting Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku. Great. He doesn't do anything of note during the tournament at all, aside from being a shell of his former self, and that's it for Gohan in Dragon Ball Super. I like the way he prioritizes his family and career like he does in GT as well, but they can't even really commit to that fully. It's like they were constantly unsure of whether or not they wanted him to be a fighter or not. And look, does Gohan get anything to do in GT? No, but at least he acts and behaves just like I expect Gohan to act at this point, and no damage is done to his character. And for the person who gets disrespected the worst, we have Future Trunks. Man, what did they do to you? Future Trunks is easily one of my favorite Dragon Ball characters. He just has so much sauce, bro. But sometimes I kind of feel like he could have had just a bit of a bigger role in the Cell Saga, like just a little bit, mainly towards the end, especially considering that's the only arc he's in. So for him to return to the story is something I'd be completely on board with. But I cannot look at him the same way after what I witnessed in Dragon Ball Super. They turned this man into a complete bitch. He does not have nearly the same level of charisma or wit, and honestly just feels like a completely different person. The reason he returned to the past and sea was to save our timeline, but also get trained by people like Goku and Vegeta so he himself could go back to his own timeline and beat the androids. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't need anyone else's help, he could do it himself, but here he's basically solely relying on Goku and Vegeta to beat the bad guy for him. He trains with Vegeta for like 10 minutes and that's it. He feels so undetermined, so unmotivated, so boring. The only thing I like about Trunks in this arc is when they reveal how he dealt with the Buu arc, by just working with Kaioshin and not letting Buu get revived at all. That is exactly how Trunks would handle this situation, and is one of the few moments it actually seemed like the writers understood a character. But unfortunately, that's the only time they understand Trunks, because man, does it just get worse and worse for my man. I have no idea why he feels the need to always argue and debate against Zamasu and Goku Black. 70% of his dialogue in this arc is just, you're wrong, Zamasu, mortals are actually awesome, which is completely different to how he acted in C, which was a lot more...
If they set that android free, it will be the end of all of us! No!
Keep in mind, the villains this time around just killed his mom. You'd think he wouldn't be trying to reason with them at all, especially because it turns out that they can't be reasoned with at all. He then gets Super Saiyan Rage. Like, come on, this is just dumb. Why do characters get transformations that are unique to them? It always feels so cheap and so unearned. And this one is just so dumb. Like, he got so angry he unlocked a new transformation called Super Saiyan Rage. Yeah, alright, buddy. It's like they were trying to do the "there's a beast inside me" meme. Oh wait, the Sword Spirit Bomb thing obviously sucks too, but the absolute worst part, and the thing that really makes me not able to look at Future Trunks the same way as I used to, is the ending of this arc. Not only Trunks' Earth, but the entire universe gets erased by Senno. The whole fucking universe. Now, regardless of how much of a cop-out this ending is, can we talk about why Trunks is just fine with this? Like, he does not react to it at all, even though everyone he had been fighting to protect the whole arc, including these 2 children, are now dead. Not only dead, but erased. They cannot even go to the afterlife. Why does he never show a reaction to this? And worst of all, instead of, I don't know, just living with a gang in their timeline, they decide to live in a version of their timeline without Zamasu, but have to live with alternate versions of themselves, and they're fine with it. They think this is okay. They all act like this is normal. who greenlit this? Who thought this was a good idea? What sort of message am I supposed to take away from this? Like, what the actual fuck? But what really sucks is that this completely invalidates Trunks' journey in C. Trunks had spent his whole life fighting the androids and living under their terror. He finally managed to beat them and save his timeline, which was a really rewarding moment, and his journey and arc came to a close. But it turns out, none of that fucking mattered because 8 years later, they're all just gonna die anyway, and not just his planet, the whole universe. I wish this arc did not exist at all, because the amount of damage it does is insane. You know what future Trunks does in GT? Nothing. He's not even in it, and I much prefer that to whatever the hell they gave us in Super. And what really sucks is that this is the last time we will ever see future Trunks again. I very highly doubt that they will ever put him back into Dragon Ball in the future. So this was our one chance, and they did. I don't even know what they did. This arc also does something that the show does over and over again that sucks just as much every time, which is how they will retcon or just straight up forget certain rules or lore or mechanics. The Potara one is, I think, the biggest example of this in the Goku Black arc. I don't understand why people even try to defend this because it's so dumb. It's made very clear that the Potara fusion is permanent in C, but for some reason they retconned it so that there's a timer on it. The explanation they give is that when Goku and Vegeta defused back in the Buu arc, it was because of the timer instead of the fact that Vegeta let his barrier down. And this is just such a dumb reason, because you mean to tell me that they just happened to defuse at the exact moment that Vegeta let down his barrier? And the old Kai implies that he has seen mortals fuse before, meaning he would have seen firsthand if it was permanent or not, which is exactly what he tells Goku that it is. But apparently it's not permanent because the writers wanted them to defuse, even though they literally have a fusion dance that they can use that has the exact same time limit. Like, what's the point? And the worst part is that this makes it so that there is no difference between the Potara earrings and the fusion dance. Like, they function in the exact same way now, so what's the point in having two ways to fuse? This is the type of shit that Super pulls on a consistent basis. Another example is the way Dende rebuilds Rumah Spirit in time, but just gets rid of the time limit. Now, it technically makes sense that he's able to do this, sure, but it feels really cheap, and you gotta wonder why the hell the 48-hour rule was implemented in the first place, if Dende was able to just remove it. Could Kami or Dende have removed the time limit back when they were training for Cell? Cause that sure would have been useful. See what I mean? It's like they don't think before they do these retcons. There's also Vegeta blowing up the time chamber from the inside, even though that just doesn't make any sense at all. Like, these things make me wonder if they've even read or watched Dragon Ball more than once. And it's frustrating because they will do these retcons and new rules with the highest amount of confidence and still get it so wrong. Like the way they explain that Shin's life is linked to Beerus. This is just wrong for so many reasons. Like, why was Shin so willing to give up his life to Goku with no second thought? Why did he even put his life on the line at all? Couldn't he just ask Beerus to take care of it? Even if Beerus didn't really care about Majin Buu like that, I'm sure that he'd care about it if his own life was on the line. And because I know someone is gonna comment it, there is actually a reason as to why Beerus didn't help, and it's because he was asleep. And also, there used to be 5 Kaioshin. Why was Beerus' life specifically linked to Shin's? What about old Kai? Was his life linked to a god of destruction? And what about when Shin fused with Kibito? How were they so sure that that wouldn't kill Beerus? Which, by the way, Shin and Kibito decide to just defuse again, because why keep any decisions made in the original series? And you know, I really don't care too much about these things individually, but it's the fact that it happens again and again and again. Like, why the hell is Mai the same age as Trunks when she's supposed to look like what she does in GT? I know they explained that in the manga, but it does not happen in the anime at all. And like I said, I don't really want to talk about the manga in this video, especially because of how different the two are. Also, the explanation just sucks anyway, and the whole thing is just really weird. I can go on and on about this. I don't even want to go into how badly they fucked up the time travel rules, because that'll take all day. Same with power scaling. And GT does maybe have a few issues like this, so does the original story to be honest, but like not even close to the level of Super. Characters don't just 5000x their strength after one day of training, and they actually use some mechanics in cool ways that make sense that Super doesn't really use at all. Like the Great Ape, Goku's tail, the way Goku uses his Kamehameha Kamehameha to launch himself, Majin Buu's absorption ability, the water from the garlic arc. But most importantly, it doesn't go out of its way to break or retcon pre-established rules every other episode. Another way I think it's clear where GT really tried to honor what came before it is with its ideas themselves, specifically with its arcs. The first arc starts with a classic Hunt for the Dragon Balls, where they really try to bring back those OG Dragon Ball vibes, especially by making Goku a kid again. We haven't had an arc of just hunting the Dragon Balls since OG, to the point where the Dragon Balls just kind of slowly turned into this convenient plot device that they just used whenever they needed. So getting a whole arc to hunt them is a really good idea, especially the way they're scattered throughout the whole universe. Now, whether or not they pulled off that idea well is anyway, next up we have the baby arc, and this one is really cool too. Showing the remnants of a race that the Saiyans wiped out, wanting revenge on them, but ending up being just as bad as the Saiyans is pretty dope. Especially so because it's a race we've actually seen before. And the next arc, yeah, maybe we should just skip this one. But, you know, I can at least say that not even in my wildest dreams could I think of what happens in this arc, because it is fucking crazy. And honestly, the idea of Hell opening up and being connected to the world of the living with all the villains they've defeated coming back to fight them is a really good idea. I mean, Hell is a pretty unexplored area of Dragon Ball, so it's kind of a full circle moment. Whether or not these ideas were executed well is... no, it's not even debatable. This shit fucking sucked mega ass. And then the last arc, I think, has a genius idea, making the overuse and reliance of the Dragon Balls a consequence. Each wish in Dragon Ball gets manifested into a dragon that they need to defeat. This arc is all about the Dragon Balls, which is perfect because this is the ending to Dragon Ball. I like that the Dragon Balls are such a big part of GT, because they should be. Super had the Super Dragon Balls, I suppose, but they were always kind of a thing in the background. That wasn't like a huge motivator. And its ideas for the arcs are so boring and unoriginal. Battle of Gods is the only one I can't say this about, as it feels fresh enough. But the next arc is literally just, what if Frieza came back? Again. Then we have a tournament arc, and then we have evil Goku, and what if Future Trunks came back? And lastly, we have another tournament arc. And I don't at all hold anything against Super for doing tournament arcs, especially because they're a big part of Dragon Ball, and I can appreciate the last one being a battle royale as it switches up the format, but it doesn't change how unoriginal it is. And keep in mind that Super is twice as long as GT. I also wanted to talk about the character designs for a minute, because I really do not like Super's character designs. Now, obviously there were some key differences between the two shows when it came to the designs, as they take place at completely different times in the story. Super takes place 4 years after the Buu arc, whereas GT is 15 years afterwards. So there's about a 10-year time difference between the two. Since Super is right between the Buu arc and the end of C, it had to come up with designs that made sense to be between those two time periods. Whereas GT only really needed to take into account the end of the C designs, as GT takes place 5 years after that. And I think the two biggest designs Super really fumbles on are Goku and Vegeta themselves. For Goku, I think they just took a very lazy route, giving him this plain orange gi that just looks so lame. I get that the orange is supposed to complement his blue hair, but it's just so bland. And halfway through the show, he just goes back to his C outfit. It's like they knew it looked terrible, but didn't have the balls to try another new design, so they just went back to the safe option. In comparison, I really like GT Goku's outfit. It feels like a natural progression of his end of C outfit, and I like how they managed to keep the blue and orange colors, but in a different way than his original gi. So Goku's super design is kind of whack, but what I really hate is Vegeta's super design, because they gave him the battle armor. Why in the actual fuck does Vegeta still have this piece of absolute garbage battle armor? We were done with this shit back in the Cell Saga. This is the last panel he should have ever worn it. So why does he go through the entirety of Super wearing it? Just like Goku, he gets this off-brand ass armor that quickly gets changed back to his original. Unlike Goku, this is not just lazy, it's just wrong in my opinion. I think Vegeta's GT design is perfect, at least in terms of of the direction of it. He just wears normal Earth clothes. His hair has even been cut and stripped back. It's clear that he's become more of an Earthling and less of a Saiyan. He even has a mustache, which he shaves off because his daughter didn't like it. This is exactly what Vegeta should be wearing, a natural progression for him. Even if Super really wanted him to wear clothes more fit for battle, they should have at least given him something that looks more like his Buu Saga outfit. Bulma's design is also pretty whack. She cares so much about her looks throughout the whole show that you'd think she would act like in C, where she switched up her outfit and hair like every other day. I can definitely buy this look from GT Bulma. She's gotten older and has sort of stopped caring as much, but I do still wish her ever-changing styles was something that was continued in both shows. Comparing the Trunks designs is kind of pointless as their age are also different, but I do have some thoughts. I'm kind of indifferent on the GT Trunks design, but I will say that it's a shame that they got rid of this absolutely dripped up vest thingy that they gave him at the end of C. Like, man, this is some shit that only Toriyama could make, and we will never have designs like this in Dragon Ball ever again. But what is really bizarre is future Trunks' hair in Super. They made it blue. Why? I mean, there is a reason for why, but the reason just makes it even weirder. You see, both Trunks and Bulma originally have purple hair in the manga, except for a few instances, mainly in chapter 1, where Bulma has blue hair. And for the anime, they chose to have Bulma's blue hair, but to keep Trunks' hair purple. So in a sense, this creates kind of a minor inconsistency, like how does black and blue make purple? So an easy fix for this would have been to just change Bulma's hair to purple in Super if they saw this as an issue. That way they would have had the same hair color and it would be manga accurate. But instead they made future Trunks' hair blue. Like, I get that Bulma's blue hair is iconic, but so is Trunks' purple hair. And you know, I would have been fine with this if they gave it like an actual in-universe reason for the change. Like, when I watched his first appearance in Super way back, I just figured he dyed it blue to like honor his mom or something. I thought it was actually kind of wholesome, but no, it's just a retcon of a hair color, which they for some reason didn't want to do with the kid Trunks. He still has pink hair, but then the superhero movie comes out and he has blue hair. Like, can we please just make a decision and stick with it? Now, I didn't really expect to talk about Trunks' hair so much, but just to make it even longer, we're doing the Trunks and Bulma hair color tier list. So first off, we have like the normal purple pink hair for both of them, and I think future Trunks really suits it, and honestly, so does Bulma. And then we have like a more blue greenish hair, which I think works fine for Bulma, but Trunks looks kind of ass in this. We then have like the pretty light purple, which I think is like kind of whatever on Bulma, but it looks pretty good on Trunks. We then have like the kind of greenish hair, which I think looks fine for Bulma, but man, does this look ass on Trunks. I take it back, this can be like a C tier. It's not even that bad, but this for Trunks, man. I also think this is fine for Bulma, but maybe not Trunks as much. It's alright though. And then for these last two, I think look absolutely peak. So yeah, this is my definitive Bulma and Trunks hair tier list. I know you all were really curious. And I'll say that in general, I think the GT designs just work better despite the two trying to do different things. GT never tries to give Gohan the most dripless, sauceless, garbage ass tracksuit and haircut. They're just really good depictions of these characters growing older. 18 looks like a very normal mother in GT, and I think it works really well. I can appreciate them keeping her iconic hair in Super, but man, are all her outfits so sauceless. This is the most plain, generic sets of clothes you could find. What's worse is her Tournament of Power fit, where they just give her some basic ass tracksuits. What's up with Dragon Ball Super and tracksuit? And again, this is a character that loves clothes. That was one of her main character traits. She started a genocide in the future and destroyed everything aside from the clothing stores. How on earth does that same person wear this? And I think the biggest difference in character designs between the two comes with Krillin. Super regresses Krillin's design, giving him back his bald head and making him look younger. On the other hand, I love what they did with him in GT. One of my favorite scenes in GT, if not my favorite, is Goku and Krillin's final moments together. One look at the two of their character designs tells us so much about them. Goku is looking as young as ever, stronger than ever, but Krillin looks like an old man. These two people who once were equal in strength are now so different because of the choices they've taken in life. Goku used every moment and opportunity to get stronger, fighting and training is what makes him happy, whereas Krillin stepped back and gave up on fighting to care for his family. He gets no second chance to rejoin the fighting and reach Goku's strength, as he missed that chance years ago. Now, I have nothing against a franchise going in a new direction or trying new things, because if you do the same things over and over, it just kinda gets a bit stale after a while. But to me, it does not feel like Super is trying to go in a new direction. It feels like it's trying to do exactly what Dragon Ball Z did, but failing to understand what made Z work in the first place. And in no way am I making this video to say that Dragon Ball GT is perfect, or even that it has a perfect understanding of Dragon Ball, because it definitely doesn't. It has inconsistencies too, like how characters are able to sense the android's ki, even though androids don't have ki, or the way certain beam attacks should be doing way more damage than they do. And sometimes Super shows moments of deep understanding, like Goku mimicking his fight with his grandfather. Something I don't really think either show does right are the fights. They both have good fights for sure, but none of them quite managed to interweave the story into them like Toriyama did so well, and have more of a focus on the action itself. What I will say is that GT has a lot more violence, and attacks actually feel like they do damage. A lot of the injuries are very gory, and blood is everywhere, just like Dragon Ball always had, while Super doesn't really get worse than this. Ultimately, neither series is going to be perfect, because none of them were created by Toriyama himself. Many people don't think parts of the original felt like Dragon Ball either, so at the end of the day, it's all up to what you prefer. But what I can really respect GT for is trying. Living up to Dragon Ball is a huge task, and regardless of the end result, I can tell they tried the best to honor Akira Toriyama's work. Despite Dragon Ball being one of my favorite stories, this is my first video on it, but make sure to check out one of these videos if you want to hear my thoughts on similar anime.